How did you create that character? Like she seemed part Sadie from Bailey's Cafe, and then another part like, I don't know, like the woman from Of Mice and Men, that one. That's what came to mind. But like, how did you create her?
You know, I get that question a lot, and it's not anything that I sit down and really truly think about. I don't sit down and say, I want to write about this specific type of person. I'm going to create this particular character. They come to me basically fully formed. And I just really sit down and write whatever it is I hear, whatever it is I see, whatever it is I feel. I also write out of order. So at the end of the novel, I have to then sit down and piece it together like a puzzle. But it's a very magical experience for me. And I think about that very question all the time, because obviously I've been doing this for 12 years, so I get this question a lot. And the best way, I guess, to describe it, and I was watching Oprah, Lisa Ling. She was down in Brazil. And there's a gentleman in a small village, and he's healing people. And he's praying over them, and that's fine. But he's also performing these surgeries, like very delicate surgeries. You see this? Scraping of the eye. And he does it. He's not educated. He's never been to medical school, and he just does it because there's something else working through him, and that's how I feel about my writing.
So, do you remember what the first part of this novel, what the first thing you began to write?
The first thing I began to write, I believe that I wrote about Emmett going down to Money, Mississippi, because that chapter starts with that boy came down to Money, Mississippi. So his arrival was the first thing that I wrote. But all of my novels, I concentrate on women, and this novel follows 3 generations of women, mother, grandmother, mother, and daughter. And it's woven in a way. Emmett comes in fairly towards the end of the story. And it's just about, really, I think, the spirit Esther, how she's affecting this family, and then how this family bumps up against Emmett Till's arrival. Because he had interactions with other people. We don't know any of this. Only thing we really know about Emmett is that he was this 14, 15-year-old black boy who was murdered. But there was something that happened before that time, years before that. And that's what I wanted to explore in the story.
At what point did you decide to make Money a character or the narrator of the story? I found that pretty interesting.
It was decided for me. I was saying earlier that I was struggling with the voice. I didn't know who the voice was. It wasn't female and it wasn't male to me. And usually my narrators, they're all female. And this one didn't feel female and it didn't feel male. And I had to ask who it was. And the next day I was told that, I'm Money, I'm the town. So the thing about this story is I had it all written out. I had about 300 and something pages in January of last year. And I was in Ohio and I was working on it. And it wasn't right, and I tore it down. I tore it down completely, down to about 60 or 70 pages, and I sent that to my publisher. And he's like, this is not a novel. This is a short story. I said, well, I just want you to know that I'm starting over again. So I took it down to the studs and built it back up and finished it completely this past September. I was done. Kalima, you had a question? Yes.
Yeah, I did. How are you?
I'm fine. How are you doing?
Good. You often talk about your work and it's mystical and how you have your ancestors that speak to you and that are there with you when you're writing. I'm sure that happened during this. one of the things that you talked about was how you, from now that you really wanted to do historical fiction, are you still feeling that?
Yes,
You were really
definitely.
Yeah.
That's exactly what I mean, there are other things that I like to write, but I know that historical fiction is what my purpose is. I had an interview not too long ago, and where I said that, oh wow, I feel like the previous the 6 books that I wrote previously, like I had been writing in the dark. I was writing, but I didn't know what my purpose was. I knew I was supposed to be writing, but why? And I know now it's to write historical fiction. But there's still other stories, fun stories that I like to write, stuff that's not so heavy, not so serious. Yes, yes.
At any point did you, especially when you took it back down to the steps, at any point did you outline it?
Never. I never outline. I never outline. That just doesn't work for me because the story changes, it grows. So I know as an editor, sometimes you need to have an outline.
No, I don't.
No? Some editors, they want outline. And I think that's kind of, you know, I get how that works, but for me, I know that whatever I put down on paper on Tuesday, 3 Tuesdays later, it's going to be a completely different story. So I prefer not to.
You're being reviewed in the New York Times this Sunday.
Sunday, fabulous review. Can I tell that story? This is my favorite story. I had a rough 2 years. Okay, I'm very transparent about that. I write about it on my blog because I think sometimes aspiring artists, no matter what medium, they think, you know, you get this deal, the Brinks truck drives up, and everything is great. And that's not always the case. Very few people have that experience. So, I was online, as always, last week, Thursday, I think it was, and I was on YouTube looking at authors reading, their different readings. And I stumbled across Jesmyn Ward. Now, Jesmyn Ward is sister who just won the National Book Award November, which is a big deal in the Black writing community. And I hadn't thought about her since the end of November. So I was watching a video of hers, and I was like, oh, that's interesting, and let me see if she has a blog. And I went and I started reading her blog, and I was like, oh, that's nice, let me see if she's on Twitter. And I went and I found her on Twitter, and I was reading some of her tweets, and as I was shutting down everything to go to bed, bing, the email bell. And I said, oh, you know, who is this emailing me at 10:30 at night? And it was from my publisher, and the subject line said, amazing. So I opened up the email, and there's a photostat copy of a newspaper clipping, review of Gathering of Waters. And so I'm not even reading the review, I'm just trying to figure out what paper it's in. So I emailed them, I was like, well, what paper is it? What paper is it? And I said, let me start reading it. And I read through the entire review, and I was like, well, that was an amazing review. And then at the bottom was reviewed by Jesmyn Ward. So you see how freaky my life is? So yes, that's coming out on Sunday. So hopefully it will make a difference. Thank you.
In terms of historical fiction, how do you approach research? And do you center yourself in research?
I don't really call it research. I just find something that I'm interested in and I just start reading about it. Look at old newspaper clippings, find books to read about it. But I think if I label it research, it would seem too much like work. Yeah. So I have a friend, Margaret Johnson Hodge, she's a writer, and there's a story that I know that she was put here to tell, and she's avoiding it because she doesn't want to do the research. She's like, oh, it's going to be like being in school. I said, but this is something that you're passionate about. If you're passionate about it, it's not going to be difficult. The more you read, the further it takes you, and then the story will just start to build. I think that helps to open up the doors to whatever story it is that you're trying to write, and one of us are trying to write. So that's how I do it. Now I've started a little bit. I'm working on a story, it's about the Holocaust. So yes, that I'm buying a lot of literature and reading up on it, and I'm reading fictional stories that center around the Holocaust so I can get my head in that space and open that door for whoever it is going to tell the story to come to me and tell it. You made it.
I made it.
Was dinner good?
Great. How much of Gathering of Water is fiction and how much is fact?
Fact. Emmett Till was murdered in Money, Mississippi. Fact. J.W. Millam and Roy Bryant were acquitted of those murders. Fact, they admitted to it a few months later, and because of double jeopardy, could not be retried. Fact, the woman, Caroline Bryant, who accused Emmett of whistling at her, she's still alive and not so well in Mississippi, in a small town in Mississippi. So all of that, most everything that has to do with the trial and the murder of Emmett, that's all true. Everything else is fictional. Yes.
How do you know when you're done?
When I'm done, I cry. It's like something leaving, and that's like, oh, okay, so I must be done. I'm teary and sorrowful. And then the real work begins, because it's a joy to write the book. It's the editing that's the issue. But it wasn't too bad. Any other questions?
Did you visit Money, Mississippi?
No, I hope to. Now I'm going to be in. I think I'm going to be down here next week or the week after, in Jackson and in Oxford. I was in Mississippi in the spring, and about 2.5 hours away from Money, and a journalist was going to take me, but it just conflicted. The trip conflicted with my flight coming back, and I think that was a good thing because I was still working on the story, and that might have changed it. But I've created Money in my head. So now the story is done. Now I'm ready to go and actually see the place, visit it. So hopefully I'll get down there before the end of the year to that particular town. Yes?
Do you read your books after you've written?
Well, in the editing process, you have to read it over and over and over again, and then I don't want to ever read it. I might, I go back and flip through. I don't sit down and reread my books from cover to cover, but I'll flip through just to, because they're all so different, and sometimes I'm like, I wrote that? Those are my words. So that's all I do, but I don't read it. Yes?
What do you expect from an editor and working with you on a novel? What kind of process?
Truth. I want honesty and truthfulness. I don't want to be handled with kid gloves. Just be honest with me, I can take that. I want to be told whatever needs to be said to me to make the book the best it can be. And that's it. Did you have a question?
Yeah, I'm not sure how to put this. Bernice, Geneva, same pages as one book, ego, alter ego, or a one?
Oh, that's my other side. That was a lot of fun. Okay, with writing as Bernice McFadden, I don't have any control. The story comes in and it does what it needs to do. As Geneva Holiday, I actually sat down. I was in control. I could look at my friends and take some of the situations they were involved with and, expand upon it and just sit and listen. Writers are huge eavesdroppers, so you like to just sit and watch and take that in. And I used a different part of my brain. And I had a really good time doing that. And I also want to prove to people that I could be funny. That I'm not, I'm really not that serious person that people believe me to be from reading my work. So you enjoyed Geneva Holiday? Oh. Thank you. Yes.
I'm curious, you mentioned the Brinks truck rolling up to your door after writing a book. If you never made another dollar, would you still write?
Yes. I've been doing this, bless you, I've been doing this since I was 8 years old. This is just what I do. It's like, will you stop breathing? No, I can't stop it. As frustrating as it has been, and it's been difficult and it's been very frustrating. When I published Nowhere is a Place, which was my last book with Penguin Sutton, and I started shopping Glorious, nobody would touch it. I have about, I don't know, 50-something rejection letters. And a lot of them to the tune of, yeah, her career's done. This is, And there were points, a number of points where I wanted to walk away and say, I can't do this anymore. The rejection is too difficult. But there's something in me that kept pulling me back. I have walked away from boyfriends. I have walked away from friendships because it's not working right. It's too difficult. You walk away from those things. This is what I was put here to do. I couldn't walk away from it, even if I tried to walk away from it. So if I never made another dollar, I would still write. I would die and you'd find hundreds of manuscripts. Yes.
What are some writers that you look up to, or that you appreciate?
Well, I have to say Toni Morrison. I just saw, she's a person that, she's a writer that, I don't even have to know what the book is about. I just found out she has a new book coming out in May. I've already pre-ordered it. I don't need to know. I don't have to read the back. I just know it's going to be fabulous. J. California Cooper. Love her storytelling style. And when I started really reading, really kind of just gobbling down books, I used to read a lot of Stephen King. He has a knack, he has a way of telling a story. It's very thorough. And Toni Morrison, she demands your attention. You can't think about anything else when you're reading her. You can't do anything else when you're reading her. Because if you miss one line, you might be thrown completely off. And I like that. I like that. So, but a number of writers that I'm intrigued with. Donna Hill is a writer that's here tonight, who's written how many novels is it, Donna Hill? 58 things. You know, that just, you know, people who practice the craft and appreciate the craft and can tell a well-rounded and interesting story. Question? No? Yes.
Can I ask you about Egypt?
Yes, you can.
How
Thank
was
you. Egypt was fabulous. I went to Egypt for a month, the month of June. It was a fellowship program that I applied for November 2010 and forgot about. And while I was in Ohio, I received news that I was accepted into the program. And then, of course, the revolution happened. And I thought I would not be able to go. And then it calmed down. And I still thought I wasn't going to be able to go because I just didn't have the money to go, and I had a fundraiser. So all of you who contributed, thank you very much. And I went to Egypt for a month, and it was amazing, and it was magical, and I was able to get a lot of work done on Gathering of Waters and also start a new novel while I was there. And I'm looking forward to going back because it's such a huge country. I only got to see this much of it. And
What towns were you in?
I stayed, most of my time I stayed on the Red Sea in El Guna, which is really like Disneyland. It's right outside of Hurghada. It's about half an hour, 45 minutes from Hurghada. So it's just a very touristy area. So if you're going to Egypt, it's nice to go visit that area, but that's not Egypt. And then I spent, I think, 3 days in Cairo. That's Egypt. I stayed at the Minna House Hotel, and you don't want to stay anyplace else because it's right across the street from the pyramids. You can look out your window and see the pyramids. It was thrilling and exciting, and all these different, the world passes through Egypt. You just meet people from all over the world. So I'd like to go back and spend another month. Yes.
What
are some of the revelations that you have discovered in preparing for your next novel that you're going to be basing it on the Holocaust?
Oh, well, what I found out some years back was that, you know, you hear about the Holocaust, and you would think that Jews suffered in the Holocaust, and Black Americans suffered, Africans suffered. In fact, the Germans practiced what they were to do on the Jews, on the Africans first. Nobody talks about that. And I think that that's a story that needs to be told.
How did,
Yes? Go ahead.
how did they practice on Africans first?
They were going into Africa and they were poisoning them. They were gassing them. They were doing all this. This is way before the war. This is years and years before the war. So this is not in your regular history books. And so, you know, I'm finding out, well, we knew about the gypsies, we knew about the homosexuals, and they talk about that, but they never talk about the people of color that died during the Holocaust. So that's the story that I want to write about. And I'm sure there's so much more that I haven't discovered yet. It's probably going to be another year before I actually sit down and really, really start writing. Any other questions? Yes.
Bernice, I like to just say I'm excited about the historical fiction. I'm working in education with young minds and just giving them another avenue of good reading. You know, something they can enjoy and get all excited about and still learn something that they're forgetting. So I'm excited about what you're doing.
Thank you very much. And that's what I you know, hope will happen. Not everybody's going to pick up a history book. I don't mind sitting down reading the history book, but I think if you get a little history in your fiction, then it excites you and it will inspire you to go and research your history or someone else's history. So, there's wine here. Oh, yes. That's all I keep looking at.
Any particular town in regards to gathering stories that you particularly like?
Any particular town within this story? Well, the two places that I talk about in the story is Money, Mississippi, which I have not been to. Although I gotta say I do like Mississippi. It's a very seductive place. And I write about Detroit, Michigan, which I've written about in the past, which is a town city that I love to death. We have a lot of family up there in Detroit. And I realize now, because I do a lot of family research, I realize now that even on my father's side, my father's grandmother on his paternal side, they lived up in Detroit for quite some time. And I didn't know that, I just found that out recently. So it's both sides of the family that has lived there at one point or another. And maybe that's why I'm so attracted to the city. So I would have to say Detroit is my favorite town.